Hello everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something slightly different than from the past. The past being Photoshop tutorials and content related to Discord. Now while this does fall into the same category as Discord, today it's going to be about emojis. So it does sort of blend the Discord and the Photoshop aspects, but not quite, because we're not actually making anything today. We're going to be learning how to properly upload emojis to Discord. So to start out, you're going to want to create a new canvas with the size being 128 by 128. Now you could go higher to 256 if you really wanted to, but there really isn't a point because your image is going to be resized anyway. So while going higher is going to mean the picture has more clarity, it's not going to matter in the end because either way it's going to be cut way down. So 128 or 256, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to go with 128 just because it's really the max point that it really starts to stop mattering. I can't even speak English today, but this is how you want it. So click create, and now we have our blank canvas. So what this canvas now does is it acts as our boundaries for our emojis. So let me grab a few examples and I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back with a couple examples. To start out, I'm going to go with this one right here. We're going to drop it in. We're going to click Control T, and this is just to resize it down to fit within this 128 by 128 space. And just drag right in the edges. All you need is your mouse, bring it down. As you can see, this all here is within the frame, but this one spot isn't. So we're going to have to bring it down even more so it's all the way within the slot. Hit the check mark, make sure you're still in the move tool, hold shift, and drag it upwards until it is perfectly centered. And then from here you can do file, save as, and then choose PNG, because if you choose something besides PNG, you're now going to have I believe it's a black background that JPEGs insert for transparent slots. So this is one example. And in terms of emoji use, this would be a good emoji for a server to have. Reason being, there isn't a whole lot of detail. And I'll show you in this example right here. When you get to this level of detail, you have to remember that the image is going to be compressed way down into a tiny form. And the more detail there is, the more complicated it's going to be to understand what the image is about. In this case, it's simple, it's minimalistic, you have an easy time figuring out what the image is. So let me grab my next example. This one would actually work. In most cases, I probably wouldn't recommend having an emoji like this, but since Discord updated how emojis appear, emojis like this would show up better. And it still wouldn't qualify to have something as detailed as this. Let me pull up a quick example of what I'm talking about. As you can probably see, this is a pretty good example right here of where the emojis have been made bigger right there, and then a smaller version, which is the standard one. Now I'm zoomed at about 100, I believe, so it's smaller than it would be in a general case, but it would help some of the more detailed ones show up, but you obviously don't want it to be overly detailed because you're still going to have trouble figuring out what the image is detailing. Let me move this in as well as an example. I'm just going to hide it for the time being while we finish up the other one. Actually, might already be done. Let me see. Yeah, in this case, this one would probably show up fairly well just because of the uploaded size, but I'd still have concerns just due to how little of the frame it actually takes up. Because in general, I prefer an image to take up the vast majority of the space because then you have more is actually going to show up. Here, probably only 60% of the available space is taken up by this image, and you still might have some trouble with visibility. So next one is going to be this, and I move it down just so you can see what I'm talking about in regards to, not what I wanted, in regards to visibility. As you can probably see already, it's a little difficult to see what the image is, so let's try zooming out to the point where you'd see it in Discord. As you can see with that as an example, I think it's even smaller actually for Discord. Probably around there. You'd have a hard time really seeing what this is just by looking at it. Another problem is you can use compressors, just tiny PNG. Let me show you what that is. Tiny PNG being this website where you can download a file and it's going to compress it really small, which you generally want to do for emojis that fail to upload. Because Discord will straight up reject the image. I don't believe it tells you anything, it just won't upload and you notice an image is missing. If that happens, generally that means the image is too big for Discord and you have to compress it. And if it can't compress anymore, then maybe you should look into changing a design or finding a different image. So back to this. As I mentioned, this would be kind of the image I'd avoid. You don't want too much detail. Same with this is way too skinny. It takes up so little of the frame and it really doesn't stand out too much. So this would be a terrible image to have as an emoji. And let me drag this in as well, just so you can see what I'm on about. So we put that there, bring it down, and you would need some kind of laser eyes to be able to see this. This is probably the size you'd see on Discord. And as you can see right now, that is really hard to figure out what that is. If you didn't know this was sushi and chopsticks, and you were zooming out this far, I guarantee most people wouldn't know what this image is on about. This is an example of one of the emojis that we have around Akiara, our mascot. As you can see, it takes up a lot of the frame. There isn't too much detail, and it really gets the point across as to what this is. Let me drag this in so you can see what I'm talking about. Control T, drag the edges to a line, bring it down in size. It lines up perfectly. And at any size, really, you can still see that it's a head, eyes, and tears running down the face. If there was more detail, for example, a little bow, or you had more of the character's body visible, you'd have a hard time seeing things. So here, it's just cut down to the head, a very small portion of the body, just so you can tell it's a person and they're sad. Let me show you one more example, this time being with text. Alright, this is the last example. This one is really both easy and hard to make, even if you aren't an artist, but you want something fun in your server. You can make something like this, and it's just two texts about maybe something that is about your community or just something funny. For example, you could have "No You," a really old joke, but it still applies, and then have the underlines underneath. You've probably seen that before, or you can put something else that really fits your community. Let me show you an example of how this shows up on Discord. So this is how it would look. Right there, you see the Ivan and then the uwu underneath it. It isn't the most clear, but it gets the point across in a pretty decent way. So that's what you want to do with these. The problem with having the white like I did, I assume most people use dark mode, so it would show up like that, but I'm using pastel colors. So light mode users probably will have a very hard time even seeing this at all, just because they're being blinded with the white light, and then they have this really light text right on it. This would not show up well on light, but for dark mode, it's not perfect, but it definitely gets the point across. And these red underlines underneath help it to stand out a little bit. And that's the point of the white stroke as well. I believe I only used 1 pixel stroke just to give it a little pop. My closing words are: be careful with the images you take and use for your server, because they might be copyrighted, and then your server could be taken down for infringing on someone's copyright, which you most likely don't want to happen. In most cases, General use images such as Pokemon are fine because big companies like Pokemon aren't going to come after you, a low Discord server, just for using Pokemon emojis. Those are generally okay. Now, ripping off an artist, for example, an artist that makes emojis specifically for their server or on commission, and you just take their emotes, put them in your server, that can get you into trouble. Don't do that. If you really want emotes about something specific and it involves a character, your best bet is to commission someone to do it. Fiverr is a great place to look for that sort of thing. There are definitely other places to do that. If you're really in a desperate need for custom emojis, something as simple as this text right here is a good place to start. And that's really all I have to say on the emoji matter. Just be careful with what you use and make sure the sizing is properly formatted. You can go higher 256, 500, 800, 2000s, but keep in mind that you're gonna have to compress that, and the larger the image is, the harder you're gonna have a harder of a time you're gonna have compressing it, and you're just wasting time doing that because 128 is really the max clarity that you'll ever need for an image. Anything above that is excessive, and you're gonna waste time compressing it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Next video, I promise I'll be another Photoshop tutorial. Probably do something along the lines of a welcome image banner that you see a bot pop up within a server. The video ends now. I'm just talking about the next video if you want to exit out right now. But as you can see with some servers, they have Tatsumaki or something welcoming members in, which is text, or the standard Discord welcome message. You can customize that with a bot, and I think some public bots actually use images. So I'll be making a video on how to really make a welcome image for your server to help it stand out. So this time, finally, this is the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have an amazing day and had a great holiday.